All right, so let's just back. We're gonna go through two SOLs today. Pretty self-explanatory stuff, guys. Hopefully, we can make it make sense. Okay. So, cost and revenue. A couple things we've got to answer. When it comes to cost and revenue, whenever you're dealing with money in a business, it all boils down to profit, on whether or not you're making money. If you're not making money, your business isn't going to stay around forever. Okay? So, with that being said, you guys notice this second line right here. The first one says profit is an incentive and a reward for business owners. We already know that that's a positive incentive. We don't have to put that part down. But it says profit is the amount remaining when all costs are subtracted from revenue. So the first thing that I want you to write down in your notes is that little formula, okay? And I'm going to try to show it to you as I write it down. If I can, if you guys can even see that down here at the bottom. But it says profit is the amount remaining when all costs are subtracted from all revenues. So simply put, cost minus revenue will equal profit. Okay? Cost minus revenue will equal your profit. So whatever it costs you to make something, then you subtract that from the amount of money you bring in to your business, you should have money left over, or hopefully you have money left over. Alright? So it is cost minus revenue. Okay? Common sense on the next two things here. It says rising costs tend to decrease profit and or lead to higher prices. So, for example, if I make the example that they give you guys, I don't know if it's on this paper or not. No, it's not. It's like when you're building a home. When contractors go to build a home, okay, and it costs them more money to buy material, then one of two things is going to happen to them. They're either going to lose money because they can't charge but so much to build a house, right? Until people are like, no, I'll find somebody else to build it. So their profit is either going to decrease, or it's going to lead to higher prices of goods and services, meaning we're going to have to pay more for materials. You guys understand that? So underneath where you put cost minus revenue, put down that rising costs lead to decreased profits. Okay? Rising cost, or just put rising cost equals decreased profits. It's hard to make money if everything around you's price is raising, okay? Now on the flip side of that, if costs go down, what happens to profit? Yeah, it goes up. We don't have to write that, but if costs decrease, then profit would increase, okay? But the bottom part there is what is important. It says a change in the cost of production influences how much of a good or service will be produced. So the change in cost is the most important thing we're going to talk about with this little section. So put down change in cost influences production, whether it be good or bad. And that kind of leads us into what cost and revenue deal with, okay? So change in cost influences production. Okay? Everybody with me so far? Pretty common sense? Alright. The next part, it says, what is the difference between cost and price? So I would put me a little subheading, difference between, and guys, I know this is elementary stuff, but we have to go over between cost and price. Now again, we're looking at this from a business standpoint, okay? So, if I go into a business, which one of these am I going to see? If I just go into Walmart to buy something, am I going to know the cost of what Walmart paid for it, or am I going to know the price of what I'm about to pay for it? What do y'all think?
So what you're going to pay?
Yeah, I'm just going to see the price. I have no clue how much it costs the business to make whatever product it is that I'm about to buy. I just know that I'm going to pay X amount of money for it. Okay? So with that being said, cost, very simply put, is the money spent for the inputs used. And we're going to write that, and I'm going to explain what I mean by that. It's the money that is spent on inputs used. Now, what do you think I mean by inputs used, or the word inputs? It's whatever we have to have in order to make that product. I gave you some examples like labor. Somebody's got to make whatever it is we're trying to sell, right? So we're going to have to pay that individual to make the product. So that's a cost. We got to pay them. The raw materials, if we're making, I don't know, give me an example of something. Shoes. We're going to have to pay for the leather. We're going to have to pay for the rubber. All that is raw material, okay? Transportation, if we're doing it in another city or another country, we've got to get it shipped back and forth, right? All that's cost. And then obviously the energy it takes to do it. So there's a lot of cost goes into making something, okay? Now, the cost is money spent on inputs used, and then lastly it says to produce a good or service. So put down inputs used to produce goods or services. Just write down goods, produce goods. I would like for you to jot down a couple of those examples. That way you know that cost takes in everything it makes to make a certain product. So it takes into consideration the labor, the material, transportation, and energy. I just jotted down labor and material. All right? So basically, guys, cost is any money used to produce a good or service. You guys with me there? Now, simple question, but let's just make sure we can answer it. Let's say we're making a pair of shoes, and at the end of the day, when I have to pay someone to make those shoes, the raw materials that I buy, I've got $10 in that pair of shoes. How much should I sell them for? More or less than $10? Obviously more, right? Because if I'm not making more than $10, am I going to be able to turn a profit? No. So we got to keep that in mind. So again, cost is the money spent on inputs used to produce a good or service. Simple enough, right? Now, the price simply is the amount consumers pay for a good or service. So put down the amount consumers pay. And again, I know this is elementary, but we kind of got to understand this part to understand the next SOL. So the amount consumers are willing to pay. So is everybody cool with the difference between cost and price? Cost takes into consideration the amount of money it takes to make the product. Price is the amount of money that we are going to buy it for. Okay? Now, same question, but we're going to talk about revenue and profit. So again, I would put down difference between revenue guys, all this is just a bunch of definitions, this little part. Between revenue and profit. So, with revenue, it says that revenue is the income generated by the sale of a good or service. So that's what we're going to put down beside a revenue. Okay? It's the income generated, and I'll explain what I mean by this in a second. The income generated by the sale of goods. Now, if you'll notice in parentheses, I wrote down, it's like a formula. I may ask you to use this formula, but if I do, I'll put it in the question. You know what I'm saying? So to find revenue, you take the price of whatever product it is you're selling and you multiply that by the quantity supplied. Okay? So for example, I spelled that wrong. Let's say a new video game comes out and Walmart's selling it for $60 and they get 10 of them. If Walmart sells all 10 of those video games for $60, their total revenue is how much money? $600. Y'all see how that works? Simple math, okay? Now, profit, on the other hand, and we wrote this at the top of the paper, but it's okay to write it again because you need to know it. Profit takes into consideration your total cost. So, for example, it says profit equals revenue minus cost. So, let's say that video game we had that we just sold 10 of at $60 a piece, our revenue is $600. Let's say at the end of the day, the total cost to make those video games for those 10 added up to be about $350. Did we make a profit? Yeah, y'all see how that goes, right? You want your profit to be a positive number after revenue and cost are taken away. All right? Simple enough? Easy enough? All right. So, this next part talks about the change in cost of production. So basically what we're dealing with is, let's just take said video game again, or the shoes that we were talking about earlier. Let's say that it normally takes $20 to make this video game that we like to play. Well, then all of a sudden the company that we're using their software for decides to start charging us $5 extra per video game. So what's going to happen to the cost of that video game since the cost of our resource went up? The video game is going to have to be sold for more money, right? Now there's a catch to that. People may not care that our prices went up, that the business prices went up. They're just so used to paying $60 for a video game that if we start charging them $65 or $70, they may be like, no, we're not going to buy that, right? So what would we have to do to supply if that were to start happening? We'd start lowering it, and then probably have to lower prices. You know, you'd have to find a new equilibrium, everything, right? So change in cost is very important. Obviously, an increase in cost will hurt a business. Now, if a company comes to us and says, oh, by the way, we've been charging you way too much money to be helping you do this, if we're going to knock X amount off, is that going to hurt your sales? No, it may help them because you can decrease the money that you're having to have people pay, right? But an increase in cost really hurts. So the chart says, how can changes in cost of production affect profits and the price of all goods and services produced? Now, I tried to break this up, and I put to the left side, it says, when cost of inputs rise. Okay, so I would make me a little chart at the bottom of my paper, and all I'm going to do is write cost and draw an arrow up. So what do I mean by that? When costs go up, this is what happens, okay? There's two things that's going to happen to production, how we make things, if the cost rises on the things we use to make it. So, when cost rises, what happens to profit? Think about it. If we got to pay more money to produce something, then our profit's going to do what? Go down. So if you notice, it says profits will fall. So put down profits fall. In any type of business, do you think they want their profits to go down? No, they do not. Okay? So, profits fall. The second thing says the price of the good or service will do what? They'll have to go up, because if we're having to pay more to produce the good or service, then we're going to have to charge people more for that good or service. You guys with me? So, put down that price increases. That's 2. Price will increase. Now, the third thing, if cost goes up, use common sense, guys, because that's basically what economics is. If I have to increase my price for a product, what do you think is going to happen to the demand for that product? Yeah, not many people are going to want to pay that extra amount, right? So, since prices increase, put down that sales will decrease. Okay? And the example I gave you is the one I was trying to tell you a minute ago. It says, for example, if the cost of lumber goes up, well, what do we use lumber for? Everything, right? Homes, porch, you name it. Lumber has something to do with it most of the time. So if the cost of lumber goes up, that means that construction people or home builders, their prices go up, right? Because they're having to pay extra money for the lumber. Well, if the home builder profits, if their prices go up, what's going to happen to their profit? It's going to go down because they're having to spend more in order to get the raw material. You guys understand what I'm getting at there? So, homeowner profits would fall, and the price of houses will go up, or the price of houses will go up. So they're either going to take less money to build it, or they're going to charge you more to buy it. Does that make sense? So which one do you think they're normally going to do, or try to do? Charge people more money in order to get it. It makes sense? So, again, if costs go up, profits fall, prices increase, sales decrease. Y'all got that? Simple stuff, guys. That's simple. So let's look at it on the other side. Let's go if costs go down. Now I was going to put costs with the arrow down right beside of it. Same idea. If my cost to make something goes down, then what just happened to my profit? It went up. So my profit increases. My profit will increase. All right. Since my profit is increasing, what do you think is going to happen to the price of a good or service? What can I do? I can lower it so the prices decrease. And of course, if prices go down, am I going to sell more or less of the product? More of it. So sales would increase. I've never met a salesman that was mad that sales increased. Does that make sense? Because if sales are going up, what's also going up? Profit. Okay? Now, does that make sense with the cost of things? Guys, it's common sense stuff. If prices go up, we're not going to make as much money. Prices will have to go up and sales will go down. But if they decrease the cost of things, I'm going to make more money. I'm going to sell more of them. And I can actually lower the prices for people to buy more of it. Okay? So of those two scenarios, which one do you think a business would prefer? Prices going up, or costs going up or costs going down? Costs going down. Okay. Very good. And then lastly, this one is talking about the change in cost of production and how it affects people that supply it. Pretty simple stuff, guys. If the supply is the quantity of a good or service that will be bought to a market at any price, when the cost of production rises, the supply will decrease because they're not going to make as many of them. Y'all with me there? We don't have to write this part down if you'll just listen to me. If I'm having to pay more money to get the raw materials I need to produce something, I'm going to make less of it because I probably only have X amount of money to spend. You guys understand that? So I can't make as many. Now, if the cost to supply stuff goes down, I can buy more of it. You guys with me? Because again, X amount of money, I can buy more of it. So if the cost to supply it decreases, the cost to me produce it would also decrease. Does that make sense? And then I could sell more of it, okay? So that's just kind of that part. But does anybody have any questions? The biggest part about what we just spent 20 minutes on is the difference between revenue and cost and then the difference between, or excuse me, cost and price, and then revenue and profit. So everybody got me there? Again, revenue is the total amount of money you take in. Your profit is what's left over after you've paid all your costs. Your cost is the total amount of money it takes to produce something. Your price is what you charge somebody to buy it for. Y'all with me? Simple enough? Okay.